First question. Why do you differentiate between awakening and enlightenment like this, when you said yourself they're basically the same process? So yeah, it's a really good question. It's a really good question. And you'll know that like many people, most people don't make that differentiation. They kind of use those two words interchangeably. Rupert Spira is a big favourite teacher of mine, and he absolutely uses, or appears to use, those words interchangeably. I don't know whether he does have a different understanding of them both, but it sounds to me like he uses them both as though synonymous. So why do I do that? Because yes, I did say, I can't remember if it was Tuesday or Wednesday, but I did say, no, it must have been Wednesday or Thursday. Yes, Wednesday, Thursday for the Awakening Enlightenment days. I said at one point, they're like two sides of the same coin, because the more we awaken to who we really are, the easier it is to enlighten. And the more we enlighten ourselves and clear up those psychological confusions of the whirlpools, the easier it is to recognise our essential nature and awaken. So they really are so interwoven and yeah, really one process happening. So for me, I guess perhaps there's two reasons why I could say that I differentiate. One is the benefit of emphasis. So when I'm in an awakening exploration with somebody, that's quite different in terms of the emphasis and the kinds of things we're talking about and the way we're exploring, compared to when I'm in an enlightenment conversation with somebody. Now that also isn't the same for everybody who's in this work. If you listened to the interview with Piers Thurston, which is linked in the bio, he was saying he essentially is always taking people back to their essential nature, because that is what supports the enlightenment process, and that's his favourite way of doing that. Whereas I use some different approaches within enlightenment, which therefore makes the awakening conversation quite different from the enlightenment conversation. It's all going in the same direction, but there's definitely a different emphasis that I put on each one, and different ways of doing it. All of my awakening exploration is based on the Complete Book of Awakening. So if that's the kind of conversation you like to have around awakening, then I'm come and talk to me, or equally talk to Sarah, who I wrote it with, because that's the kind of primary approach we take with awakening. Whereas enlightenment is for me different. As I mentioned, that's where I use the inquiring up, the inquiring down, and the inquiring towards. So we're testing the thinking, we're getting into close relationship with our feelings and our emotions and our physical sensations, and we're moving towards what do I want, what do I desire. So I have two different approaches, and although they're mutually supportive and support each other, there's a different emphasis, and there's a different approach that I take with each one. But even if I take a step back from all of that as to why and when that original distinction occurred to me, which was back in 21, in sort of autumn 21, it just made it so clear for me. It seems that a big part of what I do is create maps to support clarity, create conceptual maps and visuals and ideas to support clarity during this exploration. And that was a big map moment where it was like, oh my goodness, that is awakening, and that is enlightenment, and that makes so much sense of why working with that person had that effect, and why working with that person had that effect. It just made so much sense to everything that'd been going on. And to me, it's useful that we allow the conceptual mind, which loves a map, in on this exploration. Yes, it's useful to sometimes not speak to the conceptual mind, but I seem to find it super helpful, and my clients do. A lady yesterday who, she's had an awakening experience. She's currently in the experience of kind of being the observer of her life, which can be a phase that we move through during the process. And she found it so helpful yesterday to be reminded of the map of what's going on, to be reminded of that, who she is upstream, that awareness, the observer, which is currently observing all of the river. So yes, it feels slightly weird because it's not fully in identification, in fact, like that, as it has been. there's been this seemingly false distance created, but so helpful for her to go back to that map of the river and go, oh yes, that's what's going on. I'm fully in myself as awareness, and I'm not fully in the content of experience in the river. And of course, where we want to end up is in that loving, healthy relationship of intimacy with it all, because it is all us. There's nothing actually separate. We can't actually ever separate ourselves, awareness, out from any of what we're experiencing, but it can feel like that, and therefore it can feel different when we come back into full relationship with it. So it was so helpful to her within 40 minutes, having come in really quite caught up and quite, she used the words anxious and unnerved. And this is, these people I work with, they're very capable. She's doing a full-time job and being a part-time coach at the same time. Very capable people, but of course, when we're caught up, we get unnerved, we get anxious, we get disoriented by these things. And so by supporting her with that map of this is what's going on, it was like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. And to me, the more we are settled down in the experience, the more easily the return and that return to the full intimacy with life can happen. Because there's no support, there's no benefit to having a physical system that's in threat response through this process. Yeah, the more love, the more compassion, the more understanding we can have, the better, and the more easily we move through. So that, in a fairly lengthy way, is why I see it useful to distinguish awakening and enlightenment. And yeah, as I say, it's much more about emphasis than two separate things going on. But it does seem to me like that emphasis is useful and helps us, just put the emphasis where is useful at this point in time. Where would that be most beneficial? And in fact, that might take me on to jump to a different question than the one I was going to answer. Because somebody asked, where's that one on my list? Yeah. So somebody asked, well, how do I know? How do I know if I'm meant to currently have an awakening conversation or an enlightenment conversation? And in fact, their question had me think, wouldn't that be cool if there was some kind of simple diagnostic that would help identify that and help recognise which emphasis is more useful right now. In the Complete Book of Awakening, we use the Neti quiz as a great way of measuring. There's no other way to say it. I know some people have issues with measuring within the Awakening Enlightenment world, but the Neti quiz is a great way of taking a snapshot measure of where I am now, what my experience is like now. And so that's already there as a way to see kind of where am I on that scale. Not that it's a competition, not that we're trying to get there, but as a byproduct of our exploration, it's a great little tool to see what's happening in that byproduct aspect of experience. So actually your question has prompted me to think that could be really handy to have something which is specifically about awakening and something specifically about enlightenment, because I feel the Neti quiz in some ways is a little bit of an amalgamation of both. There has to have been some enlightenment in order for some of the responses that you'd be putting on that quiz. So thank you for the question, because that might actually lead me to do something with that in terms of supporting you in identifying that for yourself and identifying some of the markers or some of the signs that there's more awakening available or there's more enlightenment available. For now, in the absence of that, the primary way is through discussion with me. So mostly through a discovery call. So I offer free 30-minute discovery calls, which is our chance to kind of talk, and I understand where you are and where you're at and what's been going on. Very often, in fact, I get wisdom coming through saying, oh, this is perfect for this person. So I get little nudges, and if I ignore it, it just keeps coming, going, offer them this, offer them this. Sometimes it doesn't need to be separated, like we've just been saying, there's kind of one thing going on. So sometimes it'll be kind of like, well, definitely there's going to be a benefit to having face-to-face sessions. So whether we label it awakening or enlightenment, there's a thing to do there. So we just do that. So it's currently very intuitive and very much tailored to you and what's right for you. And I guess that's a benefit of the community where it's all of it. So then we don't need to differentiate. It's all included within there. But yeah, thank you for the question.